and environmental concerns. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was on April 22nd? Supervisor Hogan, seconded by Supervisor Merlino. Anything to add, change? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, passes. Thank you. Lexi, it's all you.
Okay. We're going to start with the first pending item is a request to delete the taxes, the 2010 outstanding taxes for the town of Horicon parcel 38.20-1-7.1 owned by Doyle. This had come to committee back last year, I believe in October, and it is coming back through per the request of the treasurer. I believe Mike is here and Matt is here, and I believe they've had further discussion about this. I don't know if you want to talk about this?
Yes, could we have the treasurer give us an update, please, or your request here?
Sure. Basically, I don't even know how to start with this, but back in 2010 there was a problem with this parcel. The town and the county are at odds a little bit as to exactly the amount of money and whether or not it's actually owed. So what we're going to do is, or what I'm requesting actually, is to do the resolution to delete the taxes. That way I can forward that to the town of Horicon. We can sit down and talk about it, and at that point in time we'll write it off, because there was a problem in the collection period in that year that I don't think we'll ever solve. So that's where we're at.
What normally happens when we delete the taxes?
There's a charge back to the town or the school district or whoever if we had already collected that money.
And the town would make us whole on
Yes.
that amount?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's a problem with the reconciliation. I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's a problem with the reconciliation for that particular year in the town, and that's causing some of the problems, and I don't think it's anything that we'll ever really be able to resolve. So the only way that I can write it off, which is what I really want to do, is to start by deleting the taxes.
So I got a question.
Yes, Supervisor Simpson?
So by supporting this, you're saying that the town is going to agreeing to pay it, even though the town tax collector says it's paid?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I can't write it off until we do the delete, right? Because I have to show,
No.
we have to show that we have done everything possible to collect this money before we just write it off.
I don't know.
Supervisor Loeb?
Thank
Right
you,
here.
Madam Chair.
It's a
I
match.
had the question earlier, and it's just as even stronger question. It says the detailed owner received notice of outstanding taxes and provided copies of the canceled check and the paid receipt. Also, in fact, $7,000 in interest. Does somebody know from day one? Okay, now we're up to $100 in interest. Now we're $200. Now we're $7,000. So there's two questions. I hope we don't wait 5 years and say, oh, by the way, you owe $7,000 in interest. But the first question is, it looks like the tax has been paid, but it was never resolved. I don't understand that statement.
Lexi, can...
There's a question, the reconciliation for that particular year, I wasn't here when this happened, okay, so we're dealing with people, and actually everybody that was here is gone now, pretty much. But there was a problem with the reconciliation of that particular year's collection. In other words, when the money came to the county, it was not what it was supposed to be. All right, and it was our opinion that the difference was in this one. Town of Horicon has a different take on it because of what they did in their town. So the bottom line is, the interest is something that just accumulates within the system. There's nothing I can do about that. We don't charge back for the interest.
Okay, so the interest is not even on the table. The interest is not an issue, it's not on the table.
Correct.
Okay, Supervisor Simpson?
So I'm going to muddy it up even more. There's a letter that we have that was sent to the county, and I think the county has it, that the previous supervisor and the tax collector reconciled the books, which I talked to Mike this morning. We collected the money, the check was cashed, somehow something didn't get accounted, there's no documents to prove any of this, other than I have a letter from the previous supervisor that says, here's all the money, here's the money for that parcel, it was paid, but
Paid to the county?
and then the guy found out he was in arrears down the road, it came in and said, I paid my taxes. He showed the canceled check, taxes were paid, the money was sent to the county according to previous supervisor in a document, and the tax collector, so. My tax collector says the debt's been, or the taxes have been satisfied, she can't find anything that supports that it wasn't, and there's no money left in our tax collector's account.
Lexi, what,
That's a little bit different than what my staff feels.
Yeah.
So that's why, because it was so long ago, we can't come to we can't quite figure it out exactly. So that's why I want to just write it off. But I can't write it off till we go into taxes.
okay, Lexi, can you?
What happens when somebody pays their taxes at the town? Back then, I think they were still stamping the books. I don't think they were actually doing it computerized, but I may be wrong. So in order for us to do anything and know it's deleted, it would have had to have come back as an unpaid to the county. So it was unpaid on the town end per the tax collector. Doesn't mean that it wasn't paid. You're saying that you think it was overlooked, correct, on the town end?
I wasn't there, I can tell you
Okay.
that, but I talked to the tax collector who dealt with this as she came into office, and according to the supervisor and the tax collector, this was taken care of, and actually with the previous treasurer who I talked to, Frank said, forget this, I've already dealt with this, I guess he had years of dealing with it, and so now it's weird, it's ugly head again, and Mike and I are trying to figure out, but...
Well, because what's happened is it showed up on our books
Yeah.
as a non-payment. Okay, so we're trying to just basically clear the books.
Yes,
I mean, in
Supervisor?
our records, it would show if we had $5,000 that was collected from this guy, it would show that we didn't, I mean, we wouldn't have our books have to be correct. We wouldn't have $5,000 that is unaccounted for just sitting there saying it's Warren County, so we don't. So I don't, somewhere something,
Supervisor Dickinson?
I don't mind passing a resolution to allow them to take it off the county books, but there's no way I would expect town of Horton to pay that $13,000 bill.
It would only be the $6,347.32, but I understand what you're saying. We don't want to include interest.
We've got records
in
that
it.
say they paid it.
Well, okay, does anyone else on the committee have thoughts they want to share? Supervisor Loeb?
Madam Chair, I agree. If the records show it's paid, it looks like we just messed up at our end. Clerically.
See, our records don't show that. That's the problem.
Our records are showing it was not paid.
Yes.
I just said that. I think one thing that's missing though, is that I think the treasurer needs to talk to the current tax collector, get this figured out, because
Well,
I'm not a tax collector, I wasn't there.
the bottom line is, and this is why we came again, it showed up on our books as a non-payment, okay? The information that we received from the town indicates the date that it was paid. Our information says that it wasn't. I wasn't here at the time, neither was Supervisor Simpson, neither was the collector there, neither were the people in my office. So basically what I want to do is write this off.
Okay, yes,
Because
Supervisor. Administrator
Our
Moore?
information and their information is differing.
I
No
understand.
way to resolve that.
I think the committee understands. Yes.
Just for clarification, there is documentation that establishes that the taxpayer paid these taxes. So what we're doing in deleting it is freeing that obligation in our books from the taxpayer, and then what the county and town do together, we'll figure that out going forward.
Correct.
Okay.
Does anyone want to make a motion to delete the taxes? Yes, Supervisor Straub. Second by Supervisor Merlino. Any further discussion? Supervisor Dickinson?
What is the resolution?
To delete the taxes, and then
That's the first step in order to allow the town and the county to...
That it seems so boggled here that Horicon shouldn't be held responsible for something because it's finger pointing all over the place. But right now, the first resolution is to delete it.
With no...
Guys, could you...
Well, according to Administrator Ryan, that's the first step.
Right. Supervisor Simpson?
I just want to make sure I'm not obligating.
Correct.
Okay.
No.
My understanding is that what we're doing is deleting it off this property's tax roll, so it's not a landowner issue. We can fight about the county and the town obligation with respect to each other after we delete the taxes.
Well, I'd like this resolution to say that.
It says,
We're deleting it from the county
you're
taxes.
deleting
and there's
2010
no obligation
outstanding
on the
taxes.
town at this point to make any payment.
Can we do that?
The resolution is just asking to delete the 2010 outstanding taxes on Horicom parcel 38.20-1-7.1.
I don't want them to come back and throw that in our face and say that's a prelude to them having to pay the tax. That's all I'm saying, just add that, make it clear.
Who made the motion? Stroh? Supervisor
I made the
Stroh?
motion, but the county attorney has something to add.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think as soon as you make this motion and pass the resolution, though, I think then it's automatic that the county can then bill the town. So
Definitely.
you don't get to see this again. Once you make this motion and pass it, I believe the county then has the authority to bill the town.
We have the authority, but does that mean we must?
We would also, this board would have the authority to write that off if it was deemed uncollectible.
Okay.
It's really transferring the liability from the taxpayer to the town as an intermediary until we figure out what to do with the
Will
receivable.
this come back to us?
It will come back to us if we want to write it off.
Well,
Do we normally take a motion for that, or does the treasurer have the discretion to, I'm sorry, I don't know that policy.
No.
We would have to have a motion for him to write it off?
We actually just adopted a bad debt policy. that-
Oh, yeah.
Right. it
And this
gives-
is under,
It's, yeah, I believe the thresholds were $500 for administrative action and maybe $5,000 for committee action. So this would be full board of supervisors.
okay, Supervisor Simpson.
I want to know what the rush is, because all of a sudden now I'm going to get a bill, and it's going to, like, the town of Horicon is negligent in, or delinquent in paying the taxes if we get a bill from the treasurer's office.
Okay, Lexi?
I mean, what,
I think it was brought
Nobody
forward,
nobody answered my question, though.
I was going to
Oh,
try
okay, I'm
to.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I think that this was all brought to our attention by the owner of the property. The owner of the property can't do anything with this property because it shows they have outstanding taxes. So if they wanted to try to sell it, that would then have to be resolved on their end, and they've already proven that they've paid. So all we're trying to do is make it so that the owner no longer has the $6,000 whatever in debt out there in taxes.
I understand.
And then, like Ryan was explaining, is that by passing that resolution at last month's board meeting, it would allow you guys to talk about this debt
So,
after this. Yes?
if I'm getting the sense from the committee, we could pass this resolution and then take up a second resolution saying that we would write off that debt.
Uh,
Yes?
I would prefer that you didn't at this point, because, all right, you pass this resolution to delete the taxes, then I'm going to send a bill to the town, and the town is going to say, no, the taxes are paid. At that point in time, then I can say, we have exhausted all of our opportunities to collect that money, and then I will come back with the others, because we have
I
others,
understand.
to ask for this one among others to be written
Have that
off.
information.
I have to show that we have exhausted all opportunities to try to collect this money, and this is the first step in it.
All right, we have this on the floor. Could I have, I'm going to call the question to approve deleting the taxes off this parcel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to withhold my vote.
Okay. That motion passes. Thank you.
Okay.
So is he opposed to it? Is that enough?
He did not oppose.
He-
You said you didn't vote, right?
Correct.
Okay. He's abstaining. Thank you.
He's abstaining.
That was the word.
Okay, the next item on our agenda for discussion is amendment to Resolution 259 of 2017, which is our most recent terms and conditions of sale. We had a little bit of discussion about this previously. This was brought to us by Supervisor Garrity, who I see is on his phone back there. But our county attorney did revise the terms and conditions based on some of our discussion last time. So I'm going to pass it over to her to give us an update on what she's changed.
Okay, so I think it's included in your packet, the terms and conditions of sale. So the part that we added is in bold. And I basically just took the language that was discussed last time, and I put 24 months in, which I think was presented to the committee last time, because that would line up with our code time limit. And then I took out the portion where Lexi would have to make any determination about extensions, just because I think she's uncomfortable with that, and I don't really think that's her position. It would come to Ryan, and then it would come to the committee. So that's the only language I changed based on what was presented to you last time.
Okay, so the first extension of that time can go through the county administrator, but any additional time thereafter would come before the Board of Supervisors. Okay. And just so everyone is clear, this is requiring people to rehabilitate, update parcels that have problems. If they purchase it through the tax sale. Yes, Supervisor Garrity?
Can I make a point that we should do this? We have a property that was purchased on tax sale in 2016. And this year, we went after, our code enforcement is going after the property owner to pick up the property. And now the gentleman is donating the property to the town, which we're going to take. So I started doing a little research. He purchased it in 2016, hasn't paid a lick of taxes on it since he purchased it. So we're going to have to pay taxes to the county to fix this. But this is a case in point where property was bought sight unseen by an individual, doesn't do anything with it, sits there in your property rows, and the county's been making the town whole for all these years with property taxes. The place needs to be tore down, which we'll probably do our own urban renewal in the future. But this is a case where really you got to consider doing this, because this puts a bite on a lot of the communities, and maybe we could tighten up a little bit, and these people wouldn't just buy these properties and do nothing. That just happened. I mean, I'm not making this up. It just happened to the town of Warrensburg, and I said, sure, we'll accept the property.
And the concern that I expressed last time was that it could be somewhat of a disincentive to for people to buy these properties. However, it would be an incentive for them to clean it up once they did buy it.
2 years is 2 years. You know, I mean, we'd like to see it quicker, but...
Supervisor Strauss?
Okay, so this is a 2-year time period. They have to rehab the property, and if and the property will be inspected as such within a 24-month period. And non-compliance, we will retake the title. So does that mean that the original bidder for this piece of property gets their money back?
Mary?
Yeah.
Can you address those questions?
So there's a couple of things there. So the initial time period is 24 months. They can seek the extensions. So if they come to the committee and you think it's a valid reason, they can actually surpass the 24 months. The second thing I wanted to say is they will not get their money back. The county would start an action under New York State Real Property Actions and Proceeding Law under 612. And we would take the property back possibly, and they would not get their money back. We would just get the property back.
Right, it's not automatically reverting back to us after the end of the 24 months. We would have to commence a legal proceeding and seek court permission to take it back.
And I also think it's important to note, I think that the committee should determine whether or not we take the property back. And the reason I say that is because when we take a property in the foreclosure action, all liens on that property are extinguished. But if we take this property back through this clause, we're taking it subject to any liens. So we're going to have to do title work on the property before we take it back, and I think it's important for the board to know everything that's on, and every lien that's on that in case the board has to pay that. So there's a lot of considerations.
Should we add something in this language where it says, then the county may commence legal proceedings? Should we say may pursuant to committee or board direction?
Yeah, sure.
Just as a reminder to people down the road that that's what we were intending. Yes, Supervisor Dickinson?
Who's going to inspect this?
I believe that's Charlie Wallace.
So the county?
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's It says in there that,
He's not here.
The deed shall require the purchaser to schedule an inspection by county officials at or before the end of the 24-month period.
Right, so our code department, building codes. Who is that? Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to address the gray area in this, someone is attempting, in good faith, to bring their property up to compliance, and they reached month 23, they've got 3 months to go. I believe you said that this has to come before the board to decide whether they're going to say, all right, we're in a gray area, we're going to give you another 6 months.
It's actually an initial request to extend could go to the county administrator. It doesn't say how long the county administrator can give, though, does it?
24 months.
An additional 24 months?
In there.
Does it say that? Okay, thank you.
But that's not automatic, an additional 24 months. It's,
There's a
the chair
fee
can say, I'll give you 2
associated.
months, or, and if you don't, you say you're going to be done in 2 months, I'll give you 2.5 months. If you're not done, then you come to the board and we make a decision.
It doesn't say that.
The way that it's written actually says that they would get an extension of 24 months, but we can certainly change that and give the county administrator discretion to do less.
Seems appropriate.
Up to, just say up to 20, yeah.
No, of the 20.
I think that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, I do think that needs to be a little bit clearer. A written request made to the county administrator for an extension of the 24-month period shall be accompanied by a fee, but it doesn't say how long. To me, it doesn't say exactly. Where, am I missing?
So if I change that, it might be up to 20.
Oh, so up to, yeah.
Okay.
Okay? Anything else? I'm sorry, Lexi. I think those are changes we can make. Does anyone, yes, Supervisor Conover?
I'm supporting this. It's a question for Mary.
Yes?
So the person would not only be out the status of the property, they would also be out possibly up to 2 years of taxes as well. So we wouldn't have to make them whole on the taxes. So basically, is this a type of covenant, if you will, that's on the property? Is it publicly filed? It is publicly filed.
Yes.
So are we going to issue some type of release, like you would a lien, for example, that when they get the occupancy, if I was the property owner and I had a covenant on my property, that then I had satisfied, I would want some type of release on that, which could be publicly filed for future reference.
So how we would structure this is we would change our deed, and it would all be in the deed as an addendum, and it says that in the deed, that once you get their certificate of occupancy, you're released of all these
Okay, thank you.
responsibilities.
So that's the importance of them coming back to buildings and codes, getting the inspection, and then they get their CO. Yes?
So,
All right.
just a question on how this will work. When we hit the 24 months, we either have a request for an extension or we don't. So,
Or they have a CO.
Right. If they have not met the inspection requirements and we're at 24 months and we have not gotten an extension request, does it by default go to this committee?
So Charlie and I actually talked about this. So when we issue the deeds for the foreclosure, we're going to have to in some way indicate to Charlie that this is a house that came through the foreclosure, and then he'll have to notify either myself or you to bring it to the committee.
Before we bring it to the committee, are we reaching out to the owner to see if they want an extension?
I don't think that's been discussed. I know I did talk last month at the committee about having to give notice to the town, because the applications start at the town and then they come to the county. And so Charlie had said they would have no way of knowing unless the town made a note on the application that comes to the county if this was an auction property or not. So after the auction is over and all the deeds have been recorded, I'm going to have to provide the town zoning, with a list of all the properties that sold that actually had a residence on them or that there may have been an issue with, so that they would have it, so they would know when the people come in to apply that that information goes over to Charlie Wallace's office, so they will know which properties these are.
And also, before we can commence an action under 612, we actually have to send them a letter, and that's a prerequisite to the action. So if we don't reach out to them at that point, they could contact us.
Okay, so then procedurally, we'll reach out if we've hit the 24 months and they're not in compliance, and if we don't get a request for an extension, we bring it to the committee. Okay.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Under the heading of potential bad government, everybody's wonderful and concerned about the citizens right now, but the evaluation failure to comply, it's blatantly saying this is a subjective evaluation. So the buyer has purchased this property, they've done all the work, and now the government inspector comes along and says, I don't think so. We're taking your land. Are you kidding me? I think the buyer needs to have some protection and options as far as to preventing unsavory government employees from taking their land back.
Well, I think the protection there is that they can only fail them if they're not meeting codes. We're not saying it's some subjective standard. It's bringing it up to state, county, and local standards for occupancy.
But someone has to say that.
Yeah, building and codes, they do that all the time.
I go back to my initial statement. Here's a situation, someone bought a big chunk of land, and there's a potential, so they said, well, I'm taking you to court. Well, now the buyer has to pay for the court issues. I just want to offer, I'm not trying to do a giveaway to the buyer, because I think this is good, but they still need some protection against potential bad government process.
Okay, Supervisor Dickinson?
Must be having a bad hair day, but I don't, this seems horribly complicated for what we're trying to do here. I bought a piece of property, had a shack on it, it's still on it. I've owned it for 4 years, it's taken me 4 years to get a permit to replace it in kind. I don't want, if I bought that through county auction, I don't want somebody coming up and giving me a hard time. There's due process here. You know, there were variances involved, the neighbors were there. It's way too complicated for me.
Supervisor Merlino?
You know, to Mr. Loeb's thing, I invite him to come to Lake Luzerne next week. I'll show you 2 houses that were purchased from the county 2 years ago. Take a look at what they look like, that we have to look at it every day. And I get complaints about the property every day. So, we got to come up with a solution. We can't always just protect the people. We're not taking their house. They have 2 years to get it in semi-compliance to our code.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Shutters that are falling off, windows that are broken, roof that's peeling back, those things are part of everybody. Everybody that owns a home in Warren County has to do that. So, you know, this is a start. I mean, if 24 months is long, then you can give it another 24. We're looking at it for 4 years, and then they can say take it down the line. Because 2 of them are really run-down, beat-up properties. They're not even worth being standing on the property. So, but we're looking at it, and we're worrying about it for years. Some kid goes in there and starts a fire. I got one next to a church. Church constantly tells me, when is he going to do something about that house? Because if that house goes on fire, the church is gone. These are the problems we have.
I'm sensing there's not total agreement. We can sit on this, think about it some more, get the language updated, bring it back next month. Supervisor McDevitt?
Bill, I don't think government is smart enough to do what you're suggesting. I really don't. I mean, when we people buy homes at foreclosure and they sit in Lake Luzerne for years on end, and so it seems as if, man, all of the rules and regulations are probably not in the hands of government that much. I mean, I don't think government is smart enough to put together a scheme to enable them to but it's an observation.
All right, I'm going to take one more comment on this. Supervisor Hogan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, nobody's saying we're going to absolutely take properties. If the property owner stays in communication, then this process keeps going. They are allowed an extension. Nobody's coming in the middle of the night. We're just saying, in good faith, do something with this property. If you can enact that in 2 years, come and talk to us about it.
Well, you don't even need that. You can go to administrator and get another 2 years.
Right, that's what I'm
So you-
saying. So it's not like there's absolutes. It's a process, and we're simply asking the owners of these properties to stay in communication and give us some indication that they're working on it. And might I also suggest that perhaps we need to have somebody from Charlie's office come in for an in-service?
Okay. So I'm going to ask Mary to update the language, and we'll bring it back next month.
So I'll make a motion to table.
I don't think we need to table it. Thank you. All right.
I do have one more question. John, does Queensbury have any kind of law preventing for people who don't mow their lawns or don't take care of their...
Yes, we do. We mow it and we add it to their taxes. Whatever it costs us to mow or upkeep or take down trees or whatever we have to do to make it safe and presentable, we add that to their taxes.
All right, you two can talk offline. Can we have,
I think it's a good solution.
I'd like to move on to reviewing the parcels that we have talked about for many months. Go ahead, Lexi.
Okay. So this morning, I actually talked to Patrick Holloway from the state of New York on the Chestertown property. He's been extremely busy. It's not like he's ignoring us. He's just been very busy. He was the one who wanted to work on the agreement with us to have the tanks removed. I know that there was some discussion on this property that I think the town of Chester, supervisor, okay. I think that the town of Chester was interested in this property once we move forward with it. So in talking with Patrick, usually how things work, I know it's happened before when we had an agreement with them where they did some cleanup. They would expect some type of proceeds for their work that they do. If it was a typical sale, they would, I believe it's like an 80-20, they take 80, we get 20. But I told him that this wasn't, I don't think, going to be a typical sale after cleanup, that the town was interested. So they were saying that there would need to be some type of money that would need to go to the state. He was going to work on an agreement and try to include something in there, the language. When I talked to him, it sounded like it was going to be a minimal amount of money. But he is going to try to get something together on that. Mike, I know you were involved when they did a cleanup before, and the state was involved, and they ended up with proceeds from the sale of the property?
Yes, that was the... And that basically what happened was is that they went in and did the cleanup. I don't remember how much. It was several hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean up. We took it for taxes under the agreement and we split it. I think that was a 60-40 split, where they took 60% of what we sold it for and we took 40. We had a special auction on that particular property.
Okay.
It was up in Beavertown.
So I just wanted to let you know, kind of, that's what him and I had discussed. I would assume there would be some way for us to, since we had already originally looked to allot, I think it was $15,000 to them for doing the contract with DEC. But that's the one that we postponed because he did not recommend that. He felt that we should do an actual agreement, because in an agreement they would release the property after, when they were done with the cleanup. So that's why we pulled that or tabled that from the board meeting to deal with him on this, to hopefully get an agreement instead on the Chestertown property. As for Johnsburg, we're just waiting on getting some quotes for demolition of the property. Supervisor Hogan is working on that. So I had let him know that. And then we moved to the Queensberry property. We did get a quote from ATL for some, them to go in and do some samplings, and we then, afterwards, I met one of the ATL employees at the property, and we did a walkthrough on the property. And I think once they got inside and saw it a little bit differently, I think there might be a couple of different ways of moving forward with this. She kind of had some safety concerns once she was inside of the building. One of the second floors above the office has come in on that one side over the office, so they don't really feel they can get into that one office space to do any of the testing in there. The other office, I think they should be able to completely get in there and test. She did have some concerns, though.
Well, I think we've got to go somewhere, and if testing to understand what is inside the building is needed, then that's what we should do in my mind. That's what we should do in my
I think
mind.
just doing nothing and deferring this is not a good solution, okay? So let's try to solve it.
Yeah.
Let's try to move
Yeah.
forward.
Mr. Hages, do you have any recommendations on testing, not testing, versus them not being able to get into a portion of the building?
Building will be demoed, it's got to be tested, period. And they'll have to do some type of mitigation if there is something there. We don't know what's there. I reviewed the cost of Lexi that they had provided. It is what it is. I mean, they put Lexi 4 days worth of time to go in there and test it.
They did, but I talked to her after talking with you, and she said that they felt that they could lessen that time, and so maybe the estimate might be a little lower. However, after that is when I met her at the building, and she actually went in the building and walked around and took some pictures and went back and talked to a senior project manager, and they kind of had safety concerns about the building. The other option is, she stated, was to not have it tested for asbestos, but if that was the case, then you would have to assume that there was asbestos in the whole building. And so that would mean that if there was demolition being done, it would have to be demoed with the assumption that there was asbestos everywhere. So when you're hauling that debris away, it's going to be at a higher cost. You know, I think that they still could get in there and do sampling, but again, the problem of it is some of the areas that can't be tested are going to be assumed that there is asbestos in those areas because they can't get to them.
It seems to me that would be better, though, than having to assume the entire building is contaminated with asbestos.
I don't know how they break that out. That's the bottom line, is how do they break that small area out?
I don't.
I don't know how they would do that.
Okay.
When they demo a building and the cost is significant. It's not just because you have to take it. If they assume that it is filled with asbestos, they have to take it to a special facility.
Right.
They need to get special hauling permits.
Right, right.
It's not cut and dry.
Supervisor Stroud, do you have any thoughts?
We're talking about Johnsburg or Queens?
No, we're on the Queensberry property.
We're on the Mullins property.
Well, what we need to do is have it tested, have it assessed, and we got one quote, and we all thought that was very high. We were thinking about getting another party to take a look at it and give us a quote for doing a test asbestos analysis. I understand that there's one room that's difficult to get to. That may not be an issue. I don't know if anyone's contacted the Department of Labor or not. Because you could be in a situation where the only asbestos that resides in that building could be in the roof, for example, and it's probably likely. Is it friable, non-friable? That needs to be determined. If it's non-friable and it's just particular to the roof, then the roof materials themselves would have to be taken care of in a manner that you have to take care of asbestos-contained materials. The rest of the building can then be razzed or taken care of in a traditional manner, which would save a whole lot of money. But you need that assessment done.
Right, so ATL is a vendor that we use through DPW, so we could go forward with this, contracting with them to undertake whatever sampling they can safely do.
What was the rest of it?
Okay. Their estimate is $17,000 for the survey. And this would come out of our testing fund. Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to do that? Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor McDevitt. I don't see any hands from the committee. Mr. Hajos, did you want to say something?
I'd ask Mike, the safety concern that they have, is it maybe the use of a bucket truck through a window up top that they could access this area? Because we have the ability at DPW, we have a bucket truck.
The problem of it is the second floor has gone into the first floor, so there's no way of them getting into the office space on the first floor.
But they could with the bucket truck through the window.
Because everything has come down. The roof came down into the second floor, the second
Oh.
floor came down into the first floor. So there is no way they can even get into that first floor corner.
Exactly.
Of the building.
Wait till it all comes down, and then...
We'll just have a pile.
Right.
Well, that's the cheapest demo we're having.
All right, any further discussion from the committee? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of going forward with the testing, say aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. That's okay. Okay, should I do that now? Can I have a motion to appropriate the money from the testing fund? Supervisor Hogan, thank you. Seconded by Supervisor Dickinson, and yes, Administrator Moore.
I'm sorry, I've asked this before, rough idea of the balance in that fund?
About 225,000.
225,000, so this would be 17,000. Keeping in mind, we are thinking about another 15,000 for the Johnsburg property. Okay? We have a motion and a second to appropriate the money. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries too. Thank you.
Okay.
I think the update on the Queensberry parcel, the other one that we are trying to sell to National Grid, is that they are still undergoing their due diligence on the property. I'm not sure what is taking so long, but they're going through their little real property process, so we're waiting on that. And so we're moving on to environmental concerns. The update for the Clean Energy Communities actions, as you know, we passed the Unified Solar Permit last month, which is great. It helps make things more efficient. Charlie is on board with that. He is also taking the Energy Code training. I think that is happening next week, so he's moving forward with that. We also passed the public hearing for the Energize New York Finance Program, so that will be happening in June. If that passes, we will also need to pass another resolution to have an agreement with that program, so just keep that in mind. And the final one is on the clean fleets. Mr. Hajos, do you want to give us an update, or? Oh, Mr. Morehouse? Yes.
I can update on the charging station. I was going to bring this to the facilities committee tomorrow. We were approved for both the grant from NYSERDA as well as National Grid. So I will be looking for the committee tomorrow to move forward with putting in those charging stations.
I think that's great. Thank you very much. Was there anything else on the fleets from Mr. Morehouse?
Not on the fleet, but I do have benchmarking.
Oh, great, yeah.
I have set up...
Can you stand up, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Set up a portfolio manager program where I'll be entering data from our buildings. So it's important that nobody else do that for the county. I mean, I can give anybody access to it that wants it, but this is just through the state. It's basically a spreadsheet that I'll be putting information from our buildings into.
County municipal-owned buildings.
Right.
Okay.
And that'll help us at the end of the year to benchmark and report our energy usage, whatever. I don't think anybody else would get in that situation, but I just wanted to put it out there that we have an account set up and let's not do another one.
Great. For the county, now that's, so municipalities, like I know Queensberry is moving forward, they can do their own thing?
They have to do their own. They call
Okay.
it the portfolio manager on their website.
through and put a username and a password in, and then they will prompt you to enter your data. And the data that I'll be entering is electric bills, gas usage. The other thing I found out is I know one of our items on the list was street lighting, LED street lighting. We don't qualify for that. That's strictly road street lights. Parking lot lights don't count.
Okay.
But just for information, we do have LED street lights in the new court wing. So basically, half our campus, well, a third of our campus is LED now. And we'll be updating the rest of them as we go along.
We will be. Okay, good.
Eventually.
Yeah. Good. And the benchmarking is one of those high-impact action items, so thank you for pursuing that. That's great. Okay. I am going to turn it over to Chris Belden for discussion on our Climate Smart Communities program.
Right, so I'll try to keep the comments brief because I know we're not
It's okay.
talk here. But yeah, so I want to discuss a new, relatively new funding opportunity that the New York State DEC offers, the Climate Smart Communities program. I provided a handout with the agenda. It gives us the brief program overview and then the projects we're looking to pursue. But in general, the program is a mechanism for local governments, including the county, to start planning and implementing strategies to address impacts from climate change. The program is split into two different types of actions. One dealing with certification projects, which are your planning and assessment type projects, and the other being implementation. I included some examples of projects that have been funded to date, but they include things like bridge and culvert right sizing, critical infrastructure relocation, but also things like sidewalk and multi-use trail construction. From there, the program has two areas of focus. The climate mitigation, so actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from not only the energy and transportation sector, but also from refrigerants and from organic waste. And then the other area is on adaptation, which is where most of the actions we've identified fall. And these are actions that you would basically look at the projected climate changes we're likely to see in the next 60 to 80 years and start adapting your infrastructure and systems accordingly. And so there's a couple options that communities that pursue this funding can take. You can become a registered climate smart community, you can become a certified climate smart community, or you can do none of the above. The planning department is suggesting that the county pursue the certification route, but in terms of what they are, to become a registered climate smart community, the county would have to adopt a climate smart pledge, send that to the state, and you become a registered community. And so far, about a third of the counties in New York State are registered communities. To become a certified community, you would need to do different projects, actions, submit that to the state, and there's a review process at the state, and there's different levels, bronze, silver, gold. And by doing either of those two, either becoming registered or becoming certified, your odds of becoming funded for different types of implementation projects increases. So what we're proposing today is to appoint myself as Climate Smart Coordinator, to have the board authorize us to submit an application for the projects we've outlined in the agenda, and lastly to adopt the Climate Smart Pledge so we can get to submitting that to DEC, become a registered community, which will provide us with more of an advantage for this year's funding round. I've suggested some members that we may want, if we're going to pursue this, members of a task force to help steer the development of these products, but also to help guide what types of actions we take in the future. But that's a decision of the board ultimately. I'm not looking for a decision on that today, but possibly future meetings or whatnot. What we're proposing, I'll go through the different actions, but I'll first just mention that the program is a 50% match is required. So we would be utilizing existing staff resources with county planning, GIS, our soil and water conservation district, and we'll also be getting some assistance from the regional planning board. They're not going to be providing any, they're not going to be funded as part of that project, but they will be providing some assistance to us. They're ineligible to provide match through this program, so, but they have offered to commit the resources.
Kind of give us some technical support if we need it along the way. Okay.
So, if we have some time, we'll go through the different actions here. The natural resources inventory, the first one on there, a lot of this is just compiling existing data sets and so on that County GIS, Soil and Water, Regional Planning Board have, compiling those, adding some context to what that data means, and provide an online platform for the general public and municipal boards, planning boards to use to help guide sustainable development. The vulnerability assessment is kind of building on existing plans and policies we already have in effect at the county, most notably the hazard mitigation plan that was updated in 2016. In that plan, they identified, just generally kind of identified vulnerabilities that the county could encounter due to shifting climate patterns and so on. We would use that as a springboard to kind of further suss out those vulnerabilities, and then following on that, the adaptation strategies, we would develop solutions to those vulnerabilities. The resilience vision and resiliency planning, those are kind of offering to the community the ability to come and kind of provide their vision for what they want the community to look like, and then from that we would we would review and assess different plans and policies and projects throughout the county for how we could be making improvements based on projected changes. And the last two items, the fleet inventory, something that we're already doing, but if we're pursuing certification, this would be an easy thing to just put things in a format the state wants to see it in and submit that. It's not committing ourselves to purchase certain types of vehicles or whatnot. It's just a matter of providing that inventory. And then lastly, the heat emergency plan would be an assessment of vulnerable populations out there who would be put at risk during prolonged heat events, and kind of developing strategies to notify those populations and to find them shelter or places they don't have air conditioning or whatnot. So I tried to keep it brief.
That is a very high-level review, and I want to say thank you very much. There's a lot in the Climate Smart Communities program that the state offers as available options. I mean, pages and pages and pages. So for Chris to have narrowed it down to us for what is most relevant and achievable for Warren County is really exciting to see us have that in front of us as realistic goals. Yes, Supervisor Merlino.
I mean, are we going to vote on any of this stuff today, or are we going to get into, I got a lot of questions, and actually I told you I had to leave. I have to leave too.
The two things I would like to pass today are the pledge and assigning him as our official coordinator. We would not take action on any of the other things that he just outlined.
I wouldn't mind just assigning him as our official coordinator, but the pledge is a little, because as a small town, I hear 50%. Where am I going to get the money to do 50%?
It wouldn't be it would be using existing staff resources.
That's what I want to question on staff resources, because the small towns without some kind of sales tax help, we're not going to be able to keep up with some of the...
But Chris, passing the pledge does not commit us to taking any action officially, does it?
I'll support the...
Thank you.
I'll second his motion to appoint him to the position.
Okay, so that's on...
If I could,
Yes.
I would like the authorization to submit an application. The next county board meeting would be on, June 19th or something.
Supervisor Shaw, thank you.
These funding applications are due at the end of July. So the position, I wouldn't want to get us into a position where we're waiting till the latter part of July
Okay.
to know if we can even submit the application. There's a lot of work that needs to be fleshed out before then.
We have
Okay.
a motion on the table.
So we have a motion on the table, yes, a motion and a second to assign him as the Climate Smart Coordinator. Climate Smart Coordinator. Can I have a vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes, thank you.
Motion, we give him permission to submit an application?
Submit the application, okay. Supervisor Simpson on the second. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes, thank you. And that leaves us with this pledge.
We have, I will mention, Administrator Moore has kind of reformatted the language that the state provided originally. The preamble to the document can be modified, so if there's changes to that, to the whereas statements on that resolution, we can make those modifications. The only thing we cannot change and have it be still viable is changing those last 10 elements that they outlined.
Right.
So, and I will say, this program is about the 4th year they've been offering funding for it. I've been at a few conferences. This program is being heavily pushed by the state, so I wouldn't be surprised if interest in it is growing. So every advantage we can have to receive funding is all the better. So without passing this resolution, without passing this pledge, we kind of forego that ability to become registered and again get those additional points on our application.
Okay.
So I would just ask that we...
Yeah. You're making a motion to adopt the pledge. Do I have a second, Supervisor Dickinson? I would, County Administrator Moore, do you want to say anything about your revisions to the preamble?
Yes, I tried my best on the preamble to find common ground among the 20 supervisors. I think that the preamble it's hard to disagree with anything in there. The 10, as Chris outlined, the 10 planks of the pledge, if you will, they have to be verbatim what the state dictates. So I did not change anything in 1 through 10.
Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. The town of Chester adopted the pledge, and we did revise the preamble to it, but adopted all of the planks of the pledge, because the way it was first presented as a model, you go,
Yeah.
a little tough to do this one. Brian, you did a nice job on regrouping this, but just to iterate, the 10 planks are the most important thing to adoption.
Right.
And why you're doing it.
Right. I think Mr. Moore did a very nice job, like he said, blending it to make it something that there's nothing objectionable, hopefully, to our constituents. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
I'll have a motion to adjourn our meeting, please. Yes? Supervisor Loeb, Supervisor Hogan on the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No one's opposed. Passes.